Okay, since we're in an educational institution here, everybody settle down, take your places. We really are delighted to see so many of you here today at the Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism. My name is Ernest Wilson, and I'm the dean of the school, and I think this is going to be a very exciting conversation. We're really very, very honored that you could come join us today and have the conversation in this space. We like to think of ourselves as a full-service school. We do journalism, we do communication, we do public relations, we do public diplomacy. So under one roof, we do a lot of stuff. And the motto, we spent 3.5 years developing a statement of purpose. And the statement of purpose is, we do cool stuff. So after 3 years, we sort of came up with that. And I think today is one of those occasions where we are going to do some cool stuff, and we're going to listen to some cool conversation. And I want to emphasize the word listening. This is really going to be an exercise in listening. Communication, obviously, is talking, but it's also listening. So we're going to do some respectful listening today. Let me first of all welcome, again, everyone from the Annenberg School and from beyond. And there are a couple of special guests that I do want to especially welcome. One is Ms. Garcia, who is a representative of the school board. Thank you so much for coming. I also, to show that we are global and we are very local, I also want to welcome the newest member of our Board of Counselors, which is our governing body for the school. Mr. Wellen Cham has just flown in from Taipei. Please welcome Wellen Cham and his wife Sharon, who both come in for the event. So again, this is meant to be a moment of creativity and conversation, and I very much look forward to that conversation. So I'm going to get out of the way by asking Jane Kagon from the RFK-LA Foundation to come to the podium, or you can sit there if it's more convenient and carry on.
Well, just for the sake of time,
yes.
We're on this Pecha Kucha roller coaster here, and I just wanted to say on behalf of RFK-LA Legacy in Action, we are so thrilled about this opportunity to partner with the Annenberg School and with Henry and his fantastic team of researchers and academics and graduate students. But just to get things going, I thought we could start off with a few brief comments from our team, and as we go through, I'll introduce everyone.
Can I just do one thing?
Yeah.
That I didn't do this properly. I want to make sure that I also introduce Henry Jenkins, who has really been a great partner in this. Henry, we just we recruited Henry from MIT. He's been here about 20 minutes, and in that 20 minutes he has launched 15 new projects, including this great partnership that we're very, very excited about. So, and Henry is our provostial professor of School of Communication, Journalism, and Cinematic Arts. So, welcome.
And I had met Henry walking through the faculty club. I saw him, and I had read his book, and I saw his face on the book. And I went, he's the guy. He's the guy. So, without further ado, I wanted to introduce Monica Garcia, who is president of the LA-USD Board of Education. And Monica has been the champion for RFK-LA from the very beginning, and she is the most unbelievable person in terms of creating this reality.
Well, thank you. My name is Monica Garcia. I'm just thrilled that we have a school on 23 acres along Wilshire that has welcomed 3,400 students. And that school is a combination of 6 schools, 6 autonomous schools. In LA-USD, this is a miracle. And so we've invested dollars in building a facility, and we have had a community fight. So with me, of course, Paul Schrade, Max Kennedy, Vicky Kennedy, and our principals have been in this endeavor for years, making this school possible. What we want is 100% graduation. What we want is 100% literacy at every grade level. This community right now maybe is at 33% graduation on a 4-year scale. This community is heavy, high concentration of children of color, children of poverty, children from immigrant families. And so the opportunity to come to a neighborhood school is really a change of pace for them because they've been bused for a very long time. At its height, LA-USD was busing 27,000 children. In this neighborhood, it was 3,800 children. And so now LA-USD has built 101 new schools, 102,000 new seats, and 4,000 sit at our RFK Community Schools. So my interest here is we need the best of the best to help us. And we welcome our community partners to reinvent public education and to do it at the RFK Center, where children are waiting for adults to offer them to be part of the solution. And so we have amazing folks around the table who have their piece of the story. And when we start to graduate children, they will be the leadership of the world that we all help create. So this is very exciting. This is a long, long story about social justice, about leadership, about sacrifice, and about people working together. And I come to say thank you. I have to excuse myself for not being here the whole time. But this is an opportunity, and our job is to get rid of the barriers. And so we're creating miracles along the way, and we look forward to reaching our graduation goal.
Excellent. Here, here.
Second person to speak is the incredible Paul Schrade. Paul was a former United Auto Workers leader and one of Robert F. Kennedy's best friends and advisors. Paul?
Well, it's wonderful that we're doing this because I see from USC a really important element in the educational program that we're trying to give to kids who've been bused for 30 years, who've been in overcrowded schools. We blame the teachers, we blame the kids, we blame the parents, but learning on a bus or learning in an overcrowded school is very difficult. Now we've got great schools. Fortunately, in 1987, Jackie Goldberg, president of the school board, announced an interest in the property, and that began the war. First of all, we had to take on Donald Trump. But the kids were out there saying, "You're fired, Donald Trump." And we got rid of him. The next big problem was to get beyond the conservancy, which had no real preservation principle involved in that old hotel. It was rotting away. Walls internally were rotting, and it was going to have to be torn down to the concrete skeleton. That's not preservation. That was a terrible struggle. And during this period, as we had these delays and lawyers, we had construction costs going up. So we're now considered the most expensive school in the country, which is great because the kids have got a great school. And we can deal with the propaganda from the LA Times and the LA Daily News. Anyway, it's been a wonderful experience. Max and Vicky have been really great partners in this. I was first challenged that I really didn't represent the Kennedy family by very important people on the school board. And they came in, and Ethel Kennedy came in with a very strong letter that this was be the most important and best memorial for Robert Kennedy and his social justice record and his principles. So we've got a great school, and we're going to try to make it better. And I think Henry, you and your crew can really develop a wonderful program for us.
And at the heart of this entire enterprise are the principals of this school, who are so beyond extraordinary. It's an honor to be working with you all, and we're represented today. Representing the principals here today are three of our principals. And why don't you raise your hand? Esther Solomon is principal of the School for Visual Arts and Humanities. That's Epithea, principal of the Los Angeles High School of the Arts, sorry. Epithea Danielis is principal of the School for Visual Arts and Humanities, and Dr. Chuck Flores, a recent graduate of the Razier School of Education, is the principal of the new Open World Academy, and he's going to speak briefly on behalf of the 6 principals.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to thank all of you for the opportunity to speak to you. And a recent graduate, I love SC, and I think the partnership is wonderful. It's going to be an amazing partnership with all of us here. But I think the most important thing we have to look at, and Paul referenced the fact that the story is always focused on the money, the millions of dollars spent on the site, but we never talk about the human element, and that's really the teachers, the students within our school. And we have some amazing teachers that are working with our students, but the fact that kids were bused for generations into the valley, into different areas, and this is the first time they're going to be afforded an opportunity to go to school within their neighborhood. Our kids are excited, our teachers are excited, but it's really important that sense of social justice that was created by Robert F. Kennedy being at that site. And I recall being a child, being in junior high school, the day that he was shot, the day that he was killed, and I just, for me, it's very emotional. And I know speaking with our students and trying to impart that story about what it means to be on the site is so very important. So I welcome the opportunity, and really just to end on the fact that only through education will true social justice be realized by all of our students, our community. And that's the most important thing we take from this. But again, thank you for the opportunity to be here and to speak with you and to be a part of this amazing endeavor. Thank you.
Last person to speak for RFK-LA Legacy in Action is one of our members of our board of directors, Max Kennedy.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm so grateful to be here. You can all. I'm going to just stand up here. This is a trick my great-grandfather used to do. People would pay attention because they thought he was going to fall down. I want to thank you, Dean, so much for putting this together. And Henry for coming out here. Henry's left MIT, where we have a state legislature that's completely dedicated to education, a governor who spent his whole life working in education. He's one of the finest scientific schools in the world, and he's come out here now to one of the most innovative schools in the world, where we've got a legislature that doesn't have a budget and a governor who's an actor from Austria who got $2 billion. And the kids in this thing, you have got the biggest challenge of anybody in this room. But the fact is, Monica and all these people have worked together for 20 years. Paul Schrade was shot when my father was shot. One of his last words were, "Is Paul all right?" No, is Paul all right? And the fact is, we have done this work. We are poised here to make an unbelievable difference. We've built the most expensive high school, grade school in the history of the world, in the poorest neighborhood in the United States, where these kids who have never had an opportunity are being handed right now the greatest opportunity that we can give them, which is an education. And there's a whole bunch of people out there who say we're going to fail. And I know we're not. This group, you're going to have to work harder than you've ever worked. You're going to have to work against a bureaucracy that is the most difficult and intransigent of anything you've ever been up against. And I am not kidding you. It's day in and day out. And if you do this, we are going to change the lives of these kids, and we're going to change the way public education is handed out in this country. And you look around this room, this is who's going to do it. It's nobody else. You got to rely on each other, call each other, talk to each other, and never put up with no. My favorite quote of my father said beautiful words, so many beautiful words. My absolute favorite, 4 words. We can do better. We can do better. And we can, and with your help, and the help of the people around this table, we're gonna. So thank you.
I have to say, it's both a humbling and aggrandizing experience to be asked to follow a Kennedy on a podium. But that was fabulous, all of you.
You get on the chair.
So
Don't try that.
My sense of balance is not nearly that good. What you're going to hear next is a set of blue sky propositions about what we can do together, and as we begin to think about the media education components of the RFK-LA school. It's a set of proposals, a set of ideas that come from faculty and students here at USC that are intended to inspire and provoke us to think about what doing better might mean in the context of that school. It's also the launch of the Participatory Culture and Learning Lab, which we've built, which is sort of emerging here at USC as a way of exploring a set of issues, both around education, around public policy and civic engagement, and around creative culture, to think about why it matters that we live in a participatory culture. And I'm going to explain in just a second what I mean by participatory culture. But first, a word about what we're going to do here. We're going to do what's called Pecha Kucha. And Pecha Kucha was a practice that emerged in Japan. The idea originally was 20 slides, 20 seconds each. So the idea is to get ideas out quickly, vividly, since every idea has to be made concrete through images on slides, and to sort of spark discussion by bringing a lot of voices together to allow a range of perspectives to be heard quickly and efficiently, and then open the way for conversation. It has a tendency to inspire. It also has a tendency to make people spontaneously combust. So if you feel like you're about to burst into flames, please head toward the exit. But otherwise, I think we will get started right about now. So what do we mean by participatory culture? The idea for me comes out of a white paper I wrote for the MacArthur Foundation, which identifies a series of basic principles, key concepts, core skills, and cultural competencies that we think can reinvent education for the 21st century. We've now moved, and having the legacy of throwing that white paper out, we've now moved to begin to make those skills concrete by working over the last 3 years with Aaron Riley and our teams at MIT and now at USC to develop curricular materials, teacher training programs, to help people think about these concepts of participatory culture more fully. So what do I mean by participatory culture? Well, first of all, it's one where there are relatively low areas for expression and engagement. Something like Wikipedia welcomes our participation. It's a space where people can pool knowledge and work through conceptual problems together. It's a great illustration of a space where there's very active participation of people. So YouTube has also been one of those spaces where there's a strong support for creating and sharing one's creation with others, that people are encouraged to make videos, to share videos, to comment on each other's videos, to engage in ongoing conversations through the production and sharing of media. The third principle is that it's a space where there's informal mentorship, where what is known by the most experienced participant is passed along to novices. And I put it that way because it's not just adults teaching kids, it may be kids teaching adults. It may be a space where people are learning from each other. We call it co-configured knowledge when we think about it. This is a video produced to teach people how to think about anime music videos. Fourth principle is members believe their contributions matter, that they're tied to their sense of their identity. And here we see figures from Second Life who sort of embody alternative ways of seeing themselves and presenting themselves to the world. But their acts of creation become acts of identity making and community building. So what we don't mean by this is Web 2.0. Web 2.0 is a business plan. It's not a pedagogical plan. It's not an aesthetic platform. It's a way of making money by capturing the participatory energies of large numbers of citizens and turning into revenue streams. So when we talk about Web 2.0, we often use the platforms of Web 2.0, but we're building in something larger. This is closer to what we mean. This is a website where fans write original stories set in the world of Harry Potter. There are more than 100,000 such stories up there. Fans critique each other's work and give feedback, and a number of people have studied it as a site of informal writing pedagogy that has in fact encouraged people to read and write better. This is an image from Palestine where groups of people have dressed as the Na'vi from Avatar to march through the occupied territory. So what we're seeing is worldwide, people are taking elements of their culture, repurposing them, remixing them, and using them to encourage political participation. Here's an image that sort of literally shows the remixing of political content to make expression. This came out during the election. It's a hip-hop dance battle between Obama and McCain that was used to explore their relative platforms and postures, shall we say, in the political arena. A certain woman from Alaska comes in and beats both of them on this. This is the Harry Potter Alliance, which some of us have been looking at. 100,000 young people around the world involved in human rights activism, again mobilizing through the stories of Harry Potter and using them to inspire them to go out and change the the world. They're building Dumbledore's army. Now, as they do it, they're facing a number of obstacles. And we talk about the participation gap. That is, who, not just the digital divide, who has access to technology, but also who has the ability to participate, who has the skills, the knowledge, the competency to meaningfully participate in this world. And they're blocked in the commercial sector, sometimes by struggles over copyright, and more in the school sector by decisions to block out the so-called Web 2.0 technologies that have been the most accommodating platforms for the work that they do. And so the challenge is, how do we incorporate them into education? Not lock them out, not wire the classrooms and then disengage the technology, disengage the students, but to build on the technology in ways that make a difference. We're going to talk all day about RFK and his legacy. For one thing that he embodies for me is one of our skills, negotiation, the ability to communicate across diverse communities, to speak their language, to bring people together. And we think that's a core skill that students need if we're going to overcome the participation gap and work together to bring about change. And our hope is that the RFK-LA will be a center for exploring some of these possibilities of new kinds of communication, new kinds of political participation, new kinds of cultural expression, new kinds of civic engagement. And that's our hope. So from here on out, we're going to keep rapid fluid. You're going to hear the rest of the grad students and faculty who agreed to be part of this process today. Thank you.
Some men see things as they are and say why. I dream things that never were and say why not.
What can you dream of? The RFK Community Schools represent one of RFK's dreams. Many of them actually come together. The dream that is about creativity, the dream that is about equality, the dream that is about coming together. Now, what does this dream look like today? Well, as we can see from these three movies, Race to Nowhere, Waiting for Superman, The Lottery, all of them have children on the cover, and they are lamenting what is happening in public education today with children. We also have NBC, we also have LA Times, it's making statements about that. But my question is, what about the student's voice? These are all outsiders who are telling the story for them. And what's it all about? Well, what is RFK all about? It is about kids, it is about campus, it is about community, and that's what I'm proposing. That what I'm going to talk about today is how we can give the kids a voice to speak about themselves and their experience, the campus that they're learning at, and the community that they are in fact living in. And I'm going to do this by transmedia filmmaking. Transmedia filmmaking is something that takes advantage of the revolution, the innovation in technology, and how movies are produced and how movies are distributed. Now, this allows for marginalized voices, in this case, the students, to come out and talk about, through pieces of the puzzle, the story told by different people over time, the story of the community. This means students as filmmakers and producers. We're using the new media literacies, which Henry has sort of wrote in his white paper. We have visualization, we have collective intelligence, and we have something like this, which is a simple $100 camera that allows these kids to tell their story. And Stroom is a platform USC owns that allows for students to edit their stories all online with new software. This turns the classroom into a production studio. It also turns a production studio into a classroom, where rather than competing against one another, students are working together, collaborating to make something. So now students are no longer just students, they are artists, they are directors, they are writers, they are musicians, they're anything that they want to be. And what does this mean for assessment? Qualitative data for comprehensive assessment is not something that we currently have in our system. Teachers, taxpayers, and politicians are all looking for a way to rethink the idea of assessment. So no longer filled in bubbles in a Scantron tell you what your student is, but their emotional health, their physical health, their creativity, their critical thinking give you an idea of really what's happening. So what would the production schedule look like? Starting this spring, we would come into the community to start to get to know people, start to visit places. We would also work inside the Media Lab in RFK, and come summer we would have a student-teacher training called Play, which Vanessa will talk about later, that teaches students how to use this technology, how teachers can use this technology, and then we would have BAM, action. Starting in the summer, or starting in the fall, now we'll have filming in the classroom. Students and teachers, what is happening in the classroom? This is everybody's question. This is the criticism of education. We don't know what's happening. We'd have filming on the campus, administrators, staff. What does RFK-LA mean to you? Filming in the community, politicians, community organizations, the families of these kids. What is happening in this community? They can tell the story. Possible outcomes, we would have MTA buses We would have videos actually showing on the buses. We could have installations at the Red Cat and at Mocha. We could have YouTube mashups, remixes, everything happening, the students telling the story, or a traditional narrative plotline coming through KCET or something like the Sundance Film Festival. And a giant white screen, which I would say represents a totally open palette for anything that you can dream of. So what can you dream of? I think that is the question. This is a dream that has come true. This offers the opportunity for learning, for equality, and for something that people have said is impossible. And I will end with a question in the spirit of RFK. Why not?
So my name is Joshua McVeigh-Schultz, and today I'm going to talk about a project called Synaptic Crowd, which is a collaborative interview platform that I've been working on here at USC. And so I'm more of a designer than an educator, but I'm really interested in designing for educational contexts. So what I'm going to do is briefly explain a little bit about the tool, and then switch gears to talk about possible pedagogical applications. So the Synaptic Crowd platform enables online participants to conduct collaborative, on-the-street interviews without actually having to be on the street. So what this means is that online participants don't have to be in the same place as their interview subject, nor in the same place with each other. However, interviews are conducted in physical space through an intermediary pictured here holding a camera and a phone. So behind the scenes, online participants are submitting potential questions and statements to a public pool, and then quickly voting on which submission they want to hear most at a given time. And the submission with the most votes then gets relayed to an intermediary's phone and sounds something like this.
What is your name?
Did everyone hear that?
What is your name?
So in my research, I found that this reassignment of the agency of question formation really changes the way that interviews unfold, right? By assigning that agency to a live audience, you allow different kinds of questions to be asked. And it's really this live feedback loop between audience and subject that is pushing the boundaries here. So for example, through this feedback, interviews that start out as topical can suddenly shift gears to become much more personal, right? Sort of negotiating that intersection between the personal and the political, but on the fly. So audiences here are playing the role not only of information seeker, but also at times as question answerer, emotional consoler, or playful confidant. In one interview that I mediated, a sort of seemingly benign prompt, describe the best day of your life, actually led us into a really, really powerful and poignant story about two young lovers trying to make their relationship work while the husband was deployed in Iraq and then later Afghanistan. So this collaborative interview platform offers a number of opportunities to extend the classroom to the outside world and challenge students to think about their role as civic agents in public space. And in my experiments with undergrad classrooms, I found that the process really opens up important conversations about identity, media, and access to information. So possible pedagogical applications might include interviewing local community members as part of an oral history, deploying the collaborative interview tool for a school newspaper, coordinating interviews among multiple classrooms who could all participate online at once, or alternatively, classrooms could interview other classrooms across the country or internationally. This could be deployed in high school civics classes. Administrators could use the platform as an assessment tool, and college-bound students could use the tool to talk to undergraduates on college campuses. So the Synaptic Crowd platform would help students to harness various 21st century skills. These are skills that you're going to hear a lot about as we continue talking today, but a handful of them might include things like collective intelligence, negotiation, judgment, networking, play, performance, and distributed cognition. So students would also have the opportunity to think critically about ways that access to information is filtered through various kinds of public performances. More fundamentally, though, the tool would empower students to see their own agency as something that extends beyond the classroom walls. And by making them comfortable with the idea of reaching beyond these walls, we build awareness of diversity coupled with a recognition of civic connectedness. In other words, we nurture the expectation that students can and should be able to interact with and impact the world around them. And ultimately, what this is about providing students with a sense of participatory agency. Thank you.
name's Holly Willis. I'm the Director of Academic Programs at the Institute for Multimedia Literacy, which is in the School of Cinematic Arts. And my presentation will start momentarily. I'm going to start with an article that was written 3 months ago by John Maida, who's the president of the Rhode Island School of Design and also a terrific designer himself. It was published in Forbes magazine, and he asked what will take technology's place as it fades from prominence. This is no longer the thing that we fetishize so emphatically. And his answer was really very simple. He said it begins with art, design, and you, with design really planted firmly in the middle. And his idea was really that we should be thinking about design and it's the way that it empowers agency. And as educators looking at the next 10 years, also wondering about what's going to stay, what's going to change, we might also think about the role of design, especially in an innovative curriculum dedicated to social responsibility and social justice and civic engagement. Now, a lot of thinkers, our best thinkers, are arguing that we really need to foster creativity in our students. Creativity is something that's been lost in education. Ken Robinson argues that we need to support creativity because it's the one thing that will really help students in a world of constant flux. But I would argue that what he's really articulating is a notion of design. Similarly, Howard Gardner from Harvard University talks about the fostering of empathy and understanding. He says these are the qualities that our students need in a networked global culture that's really built around dealing with cultural difference. We need to emphasize these qualities and foster them. And then Daniel Pink sort of echoes Gardner's work and talks about our culture, our age, currently as one that unites the information age and the conceptual age. And to merge those, you really need a kind of creativity. And while he marginalizes design to a certain extent, all of these thinkers are really talking about design, which harnesses creativity, but towards a very specific end. So why design? Well, I think there are 5 reasons. First of all, many of the problems that we give our students in an educational context are very well defined. And design really fosters thinking through ill-defined problems and thinking about context and situation. And the problems that we face right now as a culture are very ill-defined. So design gives us a tool for tackling and understanding how to solve those problems. Design also fosters a kind of, a particular kind of thinking, of working through hunches and intuition, of thinking with incomplete evidence. Design gives us a tool for a different kind of cognition. It's not inductive reasoning or deductive reasoning, but more a kind of constructive reasoning. So I think for that reason also that it's really a central component. We can also think about the design process, which is a unique kind of workflow, which starts often with sort of imagining something, beginning to build it, analyzing it, and reflecting, and then iterating, but often not in that kind of clean, linear order. The design process, the workflow can be much more chaotic, and it's a process of thinking through making, and I think that component is really important. Design is also fundamentally collaborative, and as the problems that we face become more and more complex, we need to collaborate across disciplines and fields, and design has always done that. And again, I think in a curriculum devoted to social responsibility, collaboration is key, so design gives us a tool for doing that. And finally, design gives us really lovely metaphors, metaphors that come out of new ways of thinking and working, metaphors that are built around the generative capability of the computer, the computational qualities of the computer. 2 of the metaphors that I'm most fond of come from Noah Wardrop-Fruin, who's a designer and theorist, talks about expressive processing, where the work of authoring is now really rethought through the design of user experiences, and he calls it defining rules for system behavior. Or we can think about a machine for the motion of parts. Think about those notions in the context of a curriculum, in the context of education. And I think you begin to see that this notion of design can be really amazing. So design, really understood as a systematic, collaborative way of problem solving and transforming possibilities, I think really gives us a set of very productive tools for imagining an innovative curriculum for the future, especially one built around social justice and civic engagement. Thank you.
Mine has a soundtrack. My name is Maura Klosterman. I'm here today to present a proposal I've been working on with the New Media Literacies group for beatmaking lab and music workshops at the RFK-LA Center. While nearly all musical forms involve some kind of rhythmic structure, known as a beat, The kind I'm talking about comes from hip-hop culture, in which a beat maker contributes a rhythmic and melodic background for a rapper or other kinds of vocalists to contribute over. With the popularity of hip-hop among today's youth, instruction and all of hip-hop culture's elements is being used in media literacy programs across the country and around the globe. It draws students to safe environments where they are able to gain skills and develop self-confidence as media producers. As Henry mentioned, we're all about participatory culture, and there are 4 forms that are laid out in the white paper he mentioned. Those involve affiliations or connections, creative expressions, collaborative problem solving, and the circulation or intervention into flows of media. Now, a beatmaking lab at the RFK-LA Center would connect students with skilled mentors and guest workshop leaders, and they would guide students as they develop audio production skills and identities as people who make beats. The center would be supported through donations from audio manufacturers and support from national foundations committed to music education programs for at-risk youth, including ones that are specifically formed around beat making. A beatmaking lab also creates opportunities for the involvement of school administrators and partners across the community, including LA's vibrant beat music scene. With these connections, the goal is to establish a creative environment that supports young people as they create original compositions and works of music. In the process, we'll grow a creative community of beatmakers across the school. This is a picture from the Interactive Media and Performance Studio Labs at the University of Regina in Saskatchewan, Canada. And it was designed to specifically reach out to First Nations students in Canada and give them a platform for developing their own voices and creating music from their own backgrounds. As a nonverbal art, beatmaking creates opportunities for all kinds of collaborations. Students can share their work with students who are working on other musical projects. They can make soundtracks for student films, and they can work with other beatmakers across distances through internet technologies. This picture comes from a recent documentary, Remix to Rio, and it tells the story of young students in an after-school beatmaking project in Toronto who traveled to the favelas of Rio de Janeiro and collaborated with a group of a community program called Soldados Nunca Mais, and they worked together on making beats using traditional instruments and digital technology. The 4th form of participatory culture involves the circulation and interventions into flows of media. And once students are able to create their own music, create beats, they're able to share them both locally and in physical space, and through social media platforms circulate their creations across the world as far as they want. My proposal includes regular open mic events where students would present their works in progress to the other students in the program, and then periodic community open mic events that would bring together beatmakers from across the city to also share what they've been working on.
Hi everybody, my name is Josh Kun. I teach here in the Annenberg School, and I'm here to tell you, try to convince you why a 19th century traditional Mexican folk ballad form is crucial to the future of the history of Los Angeles. This is a project already in the mix, the Corrido of LA, joint venture between USC, LACMA, and high school students 7 through 12 across the city of LA. The goal is how would students tell the story of their city in a song? They can post those songs, lyrics, music, drawings, paintings, ideas on a website we set up on the LACMA web pages, and those songs will then be available for the city to see and then eventually performed live by the LA band Ozo Motley. The corrido is indeed a Mexican folk music form, but it is not limited. This project is not limited to Mexican students. It's a project that is using this folk music form as a crucial, simple way to get students of all backgrounds, from kids who might be in jerking bands to Japanese Central American girls in the suburbs of LA, to take it back to what Charles Fletcher Loomis was doing in the early days of LA musical sound catching, and putting gramophone horns up to the voices of LA residents to try to capture the true stories and true sounds of LA and Southern California culture. And we got both sides. We'll be doing some of the recording with them, and it'll be the students putting their instruments up. This is an early shot of the first record store in Los Angeles in the late 1800s, Tally's Phonograph Parlor, not too far away on 311 South Spring Street, where LA residents could not only buy music, but could then record their own music and stories in phonographs in the store and walk away with some vision of their own interface and interaction between their stories and the city. Tally's Phonograph Parlor and the desire to capture the sounds of LA was part of a crucial and booming early sheet music industry in the history of LA and Southern California. All of these sheet music, these are available at the LA Public Library, which students can access. We are in the process of digitizing those as we speak and bring them to life in new ways so that these early stories can be brought to life. The corrido itself, in the history of Mexican musical culture, has always been a kind of oral newspaper. It is a folk music form that's always been subversive and underground, that is meant to tell the true stories of the true people, not what the mainstream media is telling you, but what is being said on the ground. It's been crucial in social movements throughout the 20th century. It had its heyday during the Mexican Revolution. We've launched this project precisely right now because we are celebrating the centennial of the Mexican Revolution. And this musical form told the true stories of the revolution, true stories of a people's uprising for land and social justice, ideas and meanings that we believe are still crucial to the way LA sees itself and the way students should imagine it. This is an image that refers to the Ballad of Gregorio Cortez. This is the first corrido hit, and indeed the first viral hit that went viral, mouth to mouth, vocal to vocal, the story of an unarmed Mexican farmer who ends up being chased by racist Texas Rangers, and his story becomes so important that anyone who sings his song on the ground is arrested. That history gets translated into LA in the 1940s when this guy, Lalo Guerrero, writes and records the first ever song titled The Corrido of Los Angeles, and his LA is an LA full of people who've come from somewhere else, who bring a little piece of their heart from another country, another culture, and it gets reborn in the spaces of LA. The corrido is crucial right now to the booming regional Mexican music industry, which I would argue is the #1 pop music industry currently in Los Angeles, where people are actively negotiating cultural worlds on a daily basis. But again, this is not a specifically Mexican project, but is universal to the experience of balancing identities. These songs will be chosen to be performed live by an LA band called Ozo Motley, a multiracial band who believe that we don't go around the world in our music, we go around LA. And they will perform these songs live with the students at a stage at the LA County Museum of Art on December 18th, bringing it all to a close. Thanks.
My name is Tracy Fullerton. I'm not here to propose anything so much as to talk about several in-process learning projects and development at the Game Innovation Lab over at the School of Cinematic Arts. It's our mission there to harness the power of play for learning, experimenting with new game mechanics and structures around play. One of the things we've done is we've actually had an after-school design process where we invited local teens to become part of our design process. This is an example of a collaboration with the Rossier School. Is that how you say it? Because I've been pronouncing it. In the concept of participatory design. So these kids came in and helped us develop a project for teens like themselves who are interested in going to college but may not understand the process. So we developed a game that involves them in a mock application process, one with a sort of funny and snarky sense of humor, where they could develop personal strategies that could carry over into their real-world experiences once they were involved in that. So the game models real-world choices, such as how you spend your time, balancing effort towards academics, extracurriculars, service, jobs, etc. It's a mix of cooperation and competition in that, for example, many of the more prestigious schools in the game will only accept a single player, but students often try to help each other to make sure they all get into at least one school. The design process involves quite a bit of internal iteration and assessment. For example, we tested with about 100 students and counselors in Los Angeles, and it's now actually gone up to about 1,000 schools nationwide. And we're currently taking that info in order to make a digital version of the game. Another project that we've built recently was a collaboration with the KCET. here in Los Angeles, Activision, which is a game company, and USC. And this is a multi-platform experience addressing moments of crisis that have tested the U.S. Constitution. So there was a game, an online network, webisodes, graphic novels, and a database of primary source materials. The key driver, though, was the online game that was framed as a debate. It was really a collectible card game that kids would recognize that form from things like Magic the Gathering, for example. But basically, they choose the side, the status quo, or the forces of change, and they debate hard questions around that moment of change. So this is a screenshot from that prototype. In order to make a strong case for their in the debate, they need to power up their cards before going into the debate. They do this by researching in the primary source database. So, for example, Eisenhower will be a stronger card if you link his executive order federalizing the Arkansas National Guard to his card in the game. The interesting thing that happens with this is that the design allows students to share strategies for improving their scores in the debate in an online network or in class, and really what we're doing is we're reframing the notion of cheating in the traditional sense. So here, where they cheat to share strategies in the game, what they're really doing is sharing ideas about history. I don't have time to go into all the games that we're working on in this area, but for this is just some examples of some math games that we're working on with the Department of Education that incorporate simple sort of pre-algebra concepts into game mechanics. So, for example, equations, rational numbers. And our partners are currently conducting a lot of evaluation to see how the effect of these games. It's another project we're working on with the Electric Company and Sesame Workshop that takes existing learning mechanics from those properties, layers them with mentorship mechanics and gestural play to see what effect that will have. And on the more sort of esoteric side of things, we're also working and pushing boundaries on how games might be used as a form of procedural documentary. So we're working on games like Walden, where you walk in the shoes of Henry David Thoreau, or The Cat and the Coup, which looks at the life and death of former Iranian Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh. So these are really stretching the boundaries of how games might address learning.
I'm Erin Riley. I'm the research director for New Media Literacies, and I'm going to tell you a story. I was really close with my great aunt Pebble, who we called Annie, and she had an extensive collection of souvenir spoons. And I remember as a child bringing her a spoon at every visit and asking her to tell me what her adventure had been. And each spoon evoked wonderful stories, and I hoped one day that I would be able to walk in her footsteps, which I did, but I didn't bring home souvenir spoons. Instead, I took countless photos of each experience and made countless photo albums in order to be able to share my experience. And even today I take photos, but instead of making albums, I post images to share. It's kind of like an immediate postcard, an opportunity to bring my friends and family with me to the places that matter. Now, I'm not alone in this transition of shared experiences. Whether it's a family trip or a trip through your neighborhood, others are posting images, but they're also posting tweets and videos and other forms of media. And we layer these stories on top of each other and through websites like Google Maps. And it gives us a way to travel, for our travel to become a sense of place, defined by the people that have experienced it and helped shape its meaning. Now, our souvenirs have become virtual galleries, but what about leaving something there that says to other travelers, I've been there, this is my mark? So this summer, my family traveled cross country to move here to Annenberg, and we took Route 66 the whole way. And instead of bringing our souvenir home with us, we placed 10 sculptural teardrop trailers with barcodes called sticky bits along that route. It creates a sort of user-generated narrative of people's travels on the Mother Road. And you can scan that barcode, and information of the history of Route 66 will appear on your device, as well as my adventure and anyone who came after me. This creates a sense of place that doesn't just live online, but also in the physical space we each have encountered with it. I share these stories because I want to ask you, what was, is, and will be RFK Community Schools' sense of place? These halls won't be what we walk through, but what we emerge from as a new form of learner, artist, and citizen. By tagging the places in our community, we will enable future generations to have a greater understanding of our past. RFK looked to the people and their creative facilities for action through participation in his advocacy for social justice. He said, I love this quote, "The greater voice is the voice of the people speaking out in homes and halls, streets and farms, courtyards, courts and cafes. Let that voice speak." So that was his tool, but this is our tool. This is the digital media and online communication that is a pervasive part of everyday life of youth in the United States. Social network sites, online games, gadgets such as iPods and mobile phones, these are all well-established fixtures of youth culture. And this is the RFK Community's place in the world, a maker space, a place to remember the past, make change in the present, and look forward to the future. This is a physical representation of the legacy of RFK. He began the story, but the community will layer their story on top of this narrative. So by offering this type of tagging activity for the whole community to participate in, we will offer new ways of preserving social history. This provides an opportunity for the place to be a voice of the people, to encourage them to grow into media literate citizens. Tagging shares the wisdom of the community. And remember, and also creates a ripple of hope. It's an evocative place. And remember, is it going to have to hit play? Come on.
The importance of improvisation.
This is not a spoon. This is not a spoon.
Thank you. I'm Francois Bar from the Annenberg School. And when I was reading the material describing RFK-LA, I was actually struck that there was no mention of cell phones among all the media that was described, except for one of the members of the advisory board, I believe, was accompanied as cell phones. And I would challenge you today to think about what the power of cell phones could be within a school like RFK-LA. We draw inspiration from the Mobile Voices project, which is a platform, an open source platform we built over the past couple of years with immigrant workers in Los Angeles, which allows them to tell stories about their lives by using their basic cell phones. They take pictures, record sounds, bundle that into a multimedia messaging, MMS, and upload this onto the VozMob website, where people can edit, remix, share. They can reuse the stories to print them in newspapers. We're now working on being able to send those stories back to cell phones as well, to be able to put them on the map. We've learned a number of things, but one thing we've learned is everybody has a cell phone. They're almost ubiquitous, including in populations like day laborers in Los Angeles. And telling stories through MMS is actually quite intuitive. You snap a picture, you narrate a story with it, and you bundle that into one object that can be sent. Phones as well are a very nice gateway to multimedia literacy, because when people take stories, take pictures, tell stories about their lives that they care about, they're drawn to the computers to see them, to change them, to remix them. So people who had never used computer before are now drawn to do video editing, to do sound editing. We've learned as well that the phones go with the action. They've been a powerful tool for social justice and social change. People tell stories with their phones that seldom get reported in the mainstream media. The phones are used to help organize for social action, to support it, and to report about it. So imagine what you could do around RFK-LA with phones. What you could do with the phones everybody has, that the community have, the students, the parents, the friends, the community members. You could really empower them to use a multimedia tool that they have in their pocket and that they already know how to use. You could do that in a way that helps stretch the walls of the school. Much beyond the multimedia lab that's available in the school, phones permeate the community. They're everywhere. The students take them with them from school to their neighborhood, their friends, their family, their community has them. And that could be a way to really broaden the reach and the impact of the multimedia tools. Imagine a student using your phones to interview your parents. Parents have phones, but they don't blog usually. They don't post any stories. But the best learning is when we teach, and students could teach their parents how to create a story, tell it using their phone, and share it through a platform like this one. Imagine as well telling justice stories to bridge the divide between home and school. The Metamorphosis project here at USC has shown that families and residents are really an important part of the neighborhood, of the community's storytelling network when they work in conjunction with geo-ethnic media and community organizations. Imagine as well kids and students inventing new ways to tell stories with phones, experimenting with these new ways, inventing new tools and applications, which could be iPhone apps or something that will be simpler on basic phones, and playing a real part in the design of this platform, in the design of this new medium. These are only a few examples of the possibilities. The key would be to build a participatory media platform, build it together with the students of RFK-LA, to integrate their ideas about how stories can be told and how those stories can be shared, can be jointly produced with everybody in the community, their family, their friends, and community organizations.
I'm John Pascarella.
And I'm Brandon Martinez, and we're both from the Rosario School of Education, and we are both former high school English teachers in urban settings.
And I also think that our presentation today, New Media as Critical Practice, is nicely going to scaffold the last one.
Yeah. So our focus is on teaching English language arts in the age of the participatory culture.
And so the question we sort of started with was, what do you have in common as a teacher with your students, their parents, and the members of their community? And as we started out today, looking at community, looking at an asset model of community rather than a deficit model of community. All communities that are effective in that way use social networks to capitalize.
So in order to make this a part of effective teaching, the question becomes, how do English teachers, in this case, utilize, integrate, and facilitate new media and participation, but not dominate the curriculum, meaning we still keep the essential parts, in this case of the English language arts, as the centerpiece, but using these other tools and opportunities to facilitate learning.
Right, and by scaffolding the enduring understandings of the content areas, we turn back to the literature and Jenkins' work, and we like this question especially about participatory models of learning and reading. How can we draw on the skills and mindsets young people are already developing in their use of digital tools and technologies to enhance their engagement with traditional texts?
So ELA standards are the thickest out of all the major subjects that students study, which is the biggest barrier to graduation. So you're the high school teacher, you're teaching Shakespeare, but students look at what soft would like to do under breaks and think, what the heck does that mean? So how can we get students to access Shakespeare's language in order to, among many standards, in this case, analyze character? Well, in prevailing methods, it might be confined to that 55-minute period to create a comic strip, do a hot seat, reenact, or transcribe it. But once that bell rings, behavioral, emotional, and cognitive engagement has ended. So the goal is, how do we get students to engage with that material in an ubiquitous way, but also in collaboration?
Well, we could have them all read Convergence Culture first. But we thought, conceptually, two roads are converging in a wood, as Robert Frost would be really upset in hearing right now. The traditional model, traditional literacy works with the research skills, the technical skills, the analytical skills they already have been doing in the brick and mortar, and scaffolds it with participatory models of learning.
So with something as simple as Twitter, we could take a traditional literacy skill like the squeeze method, that is taking large chunks of text and squeezing it down to its essence, but getting it happening outside the class in the form of a squeak, that is a tweet that is using the squeeze method where students can post and then respond to one another based on a select part of the curriculum. Secondly, they can now start to, in the pursuit of the characteristics of Romeo, Juliet, or another character, go on a scavenger hunt, or a scavite, if you will, by finding objects, images, text, sites, whatever the case may be, that are illustrating what they've learned about that character along that scavenger hunt. And this can culminate in what we've called a VEET, that is a video tweet, where they can now record themselves talking about what it was like to be that character for 24 hours in a day, not only in that classroom on the campus, but when they talk to the football coach, their parents and their neighbors that scratch their head and say, what are you saying? They can now interact and talk about what that was experience like to have an authentic study of character among, again, thousands of possibilities.
And in becoming the character, we put together a tweet museum or a museum.
The mom tee,
of modern tweets.
Or the Tweetenheim.
Right. And this takes the idea of e-portfolios to a different level. And so it's constantly participating, it's constantly evaluating each other. But then it's going back to our notions of our traditional ideas around content area literacy and our enduring understandings in our different subject areas. What did we intend our students to learn? How effective were our questions and the modalities we used? And what were the outcomes? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Bardavidia, and I've been conducting professional development with new media literacies over the course of this past year, and I want to talk about teachers today. Teachers are aware that the old ways of guiding their students through education as autonomous learners in a linear fashion is no longer working. They're recognizing that their students are actively participating in a globally connected world, and that their learning environment should encourage opportunities to facilitate and guide this type of participation. Play is a participatory model of professional development designed to address those needs. Our experience with K-12 educators has informed us greatly about the needs of teachers, and central to those needs is the need to play. The new media literacy play is defined as the capacity to experiment with one's surroundings as a form of problem solving. The professional development happens in 3 participatory spaces. The first is the sandbox. This is where teachers can become learners again. Your playground offers time to integrate the new media literacies with students, and your community asks for the potential for spreadability and civic engagement. Play, teachers say, is their way of keeping up with their students, but most just can't seem to find the time. However, it's about more than just learning how to use tools. Students are participating in environments through media that demand mentorship and require new knowledge and skills. It's part of our responsibility as educators to create opportunities for them to practice these, but teachers need the chance to learn first. These 12 new media literacies are a list of social skills and cultural competencies that address what students need for full participation today and tomorrow. Many teachers already have more expertise teaching these skills than they know, but play creates structure for teachers to dig deeper and integrate these skills across curriculum in more authentic ways. To start, teachers will explore how they might embody these 5 characteristics of participatory learning into their own teaching practice. Through open-ended activities designed for exploring each characteristic, educators will practice utilizing the new media literacies and subsequently face the challenge of participation head-on. This demands a shift in disposition from a teacher seeing themselves as a conveyor of information to more of a facilitator of learning. We're used to teachers being the experts standing at the front of our classrooms, and while no one wants to strip a teacher of his or her expertise, we want to create new approaches to traditional content. A co-configured classroom is one where teachers can be learners along with their students, and where their students contribute equally to the pool of knowledge being distributed there. Play provides teachers a place to practice collective intelligence and networking with peers. A learning ecosystem that supports participation and opportunities for new media literacies to emerge not always requires technological access. In this scenario, one can imagine where negotiation and judgment could become vital for the success. In Lego's Minotaurus game, there's no board and there are no rules. Players are asked to build and create them together. In classrooms where students are learning through open-ended play, increased motivation and engagement can result. And creativity. Creativity is central to a teacher's mindset in a learning environment where the skills of appropriation, transmedia navigation, and distributed cognition, other new media literacies, are also part of integrated project-based learning. Authenticity. So we're all playing in public spaces more and more. Our identities online and offline are converging, and the walls of our classrooms are dissolving. By piloting play professional development at the RFK schools, where teachers and students are already so intricately connected to their communities, the possibilities for authentic learning are endless.
Good afternoon, everyone.
My name is Laurel Felt. I'm a former educator. It's such a pleasure to be with you today. I'd like to speak with you about my objective, which is for students to acquire fundamental skills such as self-regulation, social awareness, critical thinking, and problem solving in order to show up in their classrooms and in the school of life, ready to learn and to meaningfully communicate. This summer, I developed and implemented a program in Dakar, Senegal, which is in West Africa, called Sunu Kadu, which means our voices in the indigenous language of Wolof. We taught students how to develop messages, how to use strategies in order to communicate them, such as journalism, graphic novels, narrative film, as well as to harness tools like smartphones with their video and audio capacities. We also appropriated local technologies such as clotheslines and brought them into the classroom as a meaningful tool from which we hung the skills and capacities that we hoped our students would recognize throughout the day. We'd like to connect that framework as well as our specific program from Africa to North America, specifically to RFK-LA. The benefits of collaboration are numerous. I'd like to specifically speak about what we can benefit from if we access a second community. Not only does it increase the size of the village, which it takes to raise a child, more people to comment, to collaborate, to pose critical questions, but it also means that we can hear from diversity. The framework for collaboration between RFK and Sunu Kadu can be via shared wikis where students post their work to the same place and can then engage in dialogue. It can also look like parallel projects or joint projects so that we're doing the same things in different places or the same things together online. One of the 4 elements in my model is social and emotional learning, which comprises self-regulation, self-awareness, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. This forms the individual so that they're okay with themselves and that they're ready to interact with others and can do so effectively. The second element in the model is asset appreciation, which does appropriate from resilience literature, from community development literature. Writ large, it's about recognizing what you've got internally, your skills, your interests, as well as what's external to you, the people in your life, the resources and places in your community, and optimizing them so that you can hit the ground running. We all know about the power of narrative, both using story as a tool to educate, as well as understanding that it's the stories that we tell ourselves that help us make sense of who we are and what the world is. And if we can change the way that we tell ourselves our stories, if we change it from negative to positive, from depressing to optimistic, then we can change the world. Finally, new media literacies, which my colleagues have spoken about. In this activity, we see students learning about message diffusion by engaging in speed networking so that they can better figure out who does everybody know and how can I get my message out. We studied appropriation in our audio unit. We studied negotiation in our conflict unit. So all of these elements together lead to improved outcomes. What does that mean? The social and emotional literature, as well as my personal experience, has found that people get better grades in school, higher test scores, a stronger feeling of school connectedness, fewer incidences of mental health issues, delayed onset of sexual initiation. We also see from my students' own words that they felt less scared and less unwilling to hang back in the shadows. They could understand people better. They felt like they could get their message across more effectively. They were excited about the future and talked a lot about career, even though that wasn't what we were doing. That's what this encouraged them to think about. And in the end, what we have is community, a better intrapersonal community so that living in your own skin is a more comfortable endeavor, as well as a more robust community in the local context around RFK-LA and in Dakar and around the world due to these communications and collaborations that we hope to build. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Ioana Literat. I'm a PhD student here at the Annenberg School of Communication, as well as a member in the New Media Literacies group here at USC. And after all these exciting presentations about beat making and design and filmmaking, I'm here to talk about statistics. So please bear with me. What I would like to do is to have an assessment of the impact of the after-school media literacy program that we will be implementing at the RFK-LA schools starting from next year, because I feel that having an evaluation of this program is a really important step.
And for this, we would like to have a baseline and an end-line evaluation in order to be able to isolate the direct effects of the program. Our assessment tool that we developed, which is a very innovative assessment tool, is built around the 12 new media literacy skills that Professor Jenkins was talking about and that he wrote about in his white paper. And they focus on students' creative ability as well as their media comprehension abilities. The study involves two parts. The first part is a survey, which assesses the students' self-reporting media literacy levels, while the second part is a practical workshop where they will be demonstrating those skills in online activities on the computer and games. Logistically, in terms of incentives, we will be offering iTunes gift cards, free pizza and soda during the workshops, and we also hope that the fun that the students will have will also be an incentive. And we will be needing youth assent and parental consent in order to be able to utilize our findings. In terms of the schedule for this assessment, we would like to have the baseline assessment now before the program starts early next year. Then the end-line assessment will be in spring after the program is completed, and to be decided, we're also thinking about midpoint assessments to keep a tally on students' progress throughout the program. So for the baseline assessment, we would like to have an initial visit to the school sometime in October so that we can introduce the program to the students and also distribute the parental consent forms. The students will then go ahead and fill out the survey and return the parental consent forms, and then we will have the workshops implemented by November. The main researchers that will be implementing this program will be myself and Ms. Erin Riley here, as well as we will have help from the other NML research group members who will help with the workshops and any other logistics that might be needed. Now you might ask, why is this important? First of all, it's really vital to get this information about if the program is efficient or not, especially given the circumstance that it is a pilot program and a pilot partnership between USA and RFK-LA. We need to know what's working and what is not working. Secondly, and equally importantly, we need to use this data. We could use this data as a testimonial for future grant proposals. And funders really like to see results, which we need to have both qualitative and quantitative results. And right now there's a lack of an adequate assessment tool to measure media literacy in a comprehensive and holistic sense. It will be a good introduction of the NML program, concepts and staff to your students before the program starts. And I think it will be a really fun, highly participatory and really engaging workshop where students will be exposed to new media literacies and have fun while doing it. So I welcome any comments, questions, or suggestions that you might have. And thank you so much for your attention.
Hi, my name is Doug Thomas. I'm a professor here at the Annenberg School. I'm here today to talk about a book that I've just completed with John Seely Brown called A New Culture of Learning, Cultivating the Imagination in a World of Flux. And the premise is that we're looking at what it means to pour an unlimited amount of knowledge, agency, and information into a bounded learning environment, like a workplace, like a school, like an after-school program. And what that actually would mean in terms of cultivating the imagination of students. So what I'd like to present for you today are 11 slides with verse. We understand that we need to start looking at learning as something that goes beyond simply happening in schools. When does learning start? We grow throughout our lifetime. Arc of life learning. Learning is for us not just a destination, a lifelong journey. Schools are the ways we've traditionally done this. Students are today seen as cogs in a machine, too mechanistic. Our future is not only a world of machines. It is a culture. So we start to ask the question, what does a culture look like? And not just as an anthropologist would ask, but also as a biologist might ask. Like a petri dish, cultures grow and develop. It is a process. What is organic is the most interesting. We see learning grow. The old culture is built on stability and stasis. But we live in a world where both experimentation and change are part of what we need to embrace throughout life. When we embrace change, we do not adapt or hide. We welcome the new. We need new vision to understand the new and dance with the flux. Our sense of community makes assumptions that may no longer be true. Structure has given way to agency and has changed our notions of belonging. Not community, but now a new collective needs to emerge fresh, where we can combine the personal with the group, public and private. But the effect is just not on the group, but it's also on the individuals, reshaping the very identity of the learner. I form my image and my identity with others in my world. I am more than the sum of all my parts combined. I am collective. So going back to the philosopher Michael Polanyi, we started to look at what happens in the explicit dimension and what happens in the tacit dimension when we learn. What it is I know because I do it. I live my knowledge. And what I have learned is more than I can ever say. Insight lies beneath. So instead of treating knowledge as a transfer problem, we started to look at it in terms of how we learn. It is not enough to just know things anymore. We must make things too. Like children in the sand, knowing, making, and playing, where learning happens. A key has been building on the work of Mitsuko Ito and her work she's done with MacArthur, hanging out, messing around, and geeking out. We see progression, hanging out, messing around, students geeking out. They embrace the change. They live and grow in learning, like a petri dish. So what we've had to accept is the idea of a revolution, creating a bounded environment with unlimited information. Like Hokusai saw, change is a wave we embrace in a world in flux. The children invent a new culture of learning. We must learn to surf. Imagination comes not from freedom, but from the idea that we can push back against our boundaries and our constraints. New technology opens a space for playing, cultivating minds. Imagination is the petri dish we seek for lifelong learning. Thank you.
All right, now breathe out. You've now endured your first Pecha Kucha in many cases. As I warned you, it does tend to make one's brain start to explode at certain points along the way. But we hope we've done is shared a bunch of ideas about things that are possible to do. These are ideas that build on research people here at Annenberg and at Cinema and Education are engaged with, and they're things that we're eager to bring to communities around LA. And we hope some of these will be taken up and realized in the various schools that constitute the RFK-LA school. We see this as the beginning of a conversation where, you know, we've shared with you some of our thoughts here. We want to go to the school and engage in conversations there and to begin to see what makes sense in the intersection between USC and RFK-LA. But we're delighted to start that conversation here today. So we've got a few minutes that we wanted to open up the floor for questions, comments, suggestions, other brainstorms that this may have sparked for people. I'm going to moderate and see where people want to take this. But we welcome anyone and everyone to jump in. Is that yes?
So my question, it's a question, comment, it's for everybody who's dealing with teaching or implementing tools in the classrooms. And this word social justice has been thrown around. But I want to know specifically, how are these tools going to bring about social change? Because specifically, like, I'm thinking about relevant education in this community, and putting all of these technological tools into these classrooms isn't necessarily going to keep these kids from dropping out, unless the education is relevant to their lives. So they have to be attached to what they're learning in order for this to make a difference. So, I mean, importantly, like, what are you doing for teachers to increase their cultural competency in these urban schools?
Yeah, you want to jump in?
Yeah, Brand and I started with this idea around tweeting because it was one I did last year as an English language arts teacher in an urban district.
And it was one in which the students were participating through their mobile devices at all different hours. Whether it was, whether I had to do a project where they were in personaing a character, or if I was having them do a project and they had questions about it and needed to contact me at any sort of point along the way. Sometimes they were getting together, sometimes they were finding out where they were physically and then getting together. And other times they were doing it in the class and I didn't care, but my supervisors were walking past and wondering what the hell's going on if there was on the cell phone. But they're communicating and participating in a way that, regardless of their socioeconomic background, they're able to do it with the use of the cell phone. So that's how this particular idea came about.
I'd like to throw in my 2 cents as well. Thank you for the question, Alex. I think that using the affordances of new media allows students to engage with artifacts and content that's meaningful. I think that it also creates a space for students to become more engaged due to the meaningfulness of the content, that it does reflect their real lives, that allows them to geek out, as Doug mentioned, and that it also allows them to communicate in a way that's real, so that their words can be heard and understood in this micro context as well as in a macro context, which can then facilitate social change. In our program specifically, we were hoping that the students would use these experiences in order to create health messages for their communities, specifically about HIV and AIDS. But with the ability to access technology, to understand oneself and others, to engage in research and evaluation, critical thinking, collaboration, you don't just have to talk about HIV and AIDS. You can talk about anything. And that's how we change the world.
Don?
I can't imagine it's any better in grade school, but I probably shouldn't say this with my dean sitting in the room, but a semester ago I had what I thought was the most stinging indictment of the USC system, which was I had a straight-A student for 3.5 years, had been at USC, who came to me to write her honors thesis. And my question to her was, what are you passionate about? What do you love? What do you want to wake up and write about every morning? And she sat there for about 10 minutes and said, I have no idea. No one's ever asked me that before. I can't imagine that anyone's asking grade school students what they care about. Right? And I think that that's probably where we start, you know, with this question, which is what are the passions that students have? And if you look at our secondary school system, it almost seems like it's designed to beat the passion out of the kids. So by the time they get to high school and college, that they can be cogs in the machine that I was talking about. And that's exactly what we don't need anymore, because cogs aren't innovators. They're performers. And we're training kids for the jobs of the 20th century. And that's a problem, and it's going to come home to roost.
Michael, you wanted to
I got so excited with my presentation, I should have failed to say like what I am or who I am, what I do. So I'm a master's in teaching student at Garcia to teach secondary English. And so I ask myself this constantly. I'm currently observing at a school in North Hollywood and some other schools as well, and I see this happening constantly, where students have no idea why they're actually in the classroom. And so to Doug's point, what I think we hope to do with some of these programs, mine especially, is to get students asking why, and having a transparent way for the community to be involved with that, but for people to see what the why is, what people are actually doing, because as I showed in the slide, the classroom can be a production studio, but the production studio can be a classroom as well. So you sort of break this mold of learning only happens in this building. It's happening all the time in your community. And if you're documenting that in somehow, whether it's live journal, blogs, video cameras, or VOSMOB, you're able to have this reservoir of data to show what kids are doing and what they actually care about. And that gives educators a chance to look into that petri dish to think about what is relevant to their students.
You want to, just to go back to outcomes, and I just want to say that, you know, enduring understandings that have traditionally worked in the classroom around literacy, around meaning making, are being done in a more communal way by capitalizing on the participatory culture and activities and skills that the kids are native to or emerging in and within. And how are we capitalizing on that? If I can create that community and asking my students every day what they care about in my classroom, how can I then scaffold that in using multimodal means to do it, and in which I get to participate all the time beyond my classroom and have a sense of worth, self-worth.
Yeah, sure. I just want to say, as an observer to this, this has been hugely important and helpful. And I really want to thank everybody who's made the presentation. And you sort of never know what you're going to take away from an experience. And what this reinforces for me as dean of this school is the importance of teaching and communication at a moment when this building that you're looking at has completely run out of space. Anybody I hire, I have to kick somebody else literally out of the building, which is not a good way to proceed. And so we're now thinking about, well, what would a new building look like? What would a new campus look like? And so we're saying, well, how do we ask the people who will be in things that we hope are not containers but are connectors? And the language that's been used in the room today has just been really helpful to me as we think about designing a whole new building. And so maybe what we do is, Henry, I guess we pull together groups of students, and we pull together groups of faculty, and we pull together other stakeholders, and especially we go talk to the people at RFK, because you have obviously thought a lot about how space affects learning, and learning affects space. So I would just want to thank all of you for coming today, because this has been, at least for me speaking personally, kind of an unintended wonderful outcome, is that I've learned a new way to think about space can be used for education, asking the why question, and the social justice question as well. Just want to say thank you.
So you wanted to jump in?
I was just going to say that it was such a stimulating presentation, and I want to thank all of you for that. I was just thinking in response to your question, another thing about asking kids, what is your passion, what do you want to do? Well, if they're limited in their capacity to understand what is possible, what is there to do, I would love to see something developed where it's like, not only are they interacting with other students across the globe, within the globe next door, but they're also interacting with successful adults. And they say, these are my passions. Well, not just hooking them up with college, because college is just another thing that you do in the cog, as you spoke of. But it's what are you doing? What are these successful people doing in their lives? You know, they have no clue. You know, when you say careers, I want to be a doctor or a lawyer. You know, what is available out there, and who are these other successful people out there? Who are the politicians? Who are the, you know, and to have an opportunity to listen to interviews with those people or interact with them live. We're trying to set up opportunities for our kids to do mentorships and internships, but to do 100 seniors and get them out there to actual people, whereas this could be a real tool to get them out to meet the numbers in greater capacity.
Yes.
You know, I wanted to mention too, we're pilot schools on this large campus, 3,500 kids, but one of the tenets that we really grasp onto is the fact that we're really personalizing instruction for our students. So the fact that we're creating these bonds between the teacher, the student, the community. And I think that's really impactful in the sense that students come away with a sense of, I guess, feeling, and so people care about them. That's the most important thing we can do here, really, is the fact that students know that we care. We all talk about our students on a daily basis, kids that are impacted by the neighborhood. I mean, there's gangs surrounding our campus. We deal with that on a daily basis. We deal with those problems. So we're not immune from the things that are occurring outside of our boundaries or parameters there. But the thing is, kids bring those problems to campus. We have to work with it. But I know that our teachers are passionate about what they're doing. We hired our teachers. We hand selected our teachers on our campus, and I'm really proud of the faculty I have. But I think just opening the students' eyes to the various possibilities that exist outside the campus, affording them access to different opportunities that exist outside the campus, and really making it relevant to their lives. What is this all about? What is education? Where do I go from here? But that's where we make the connection, the thread for our kids and the community.
Back there in the room.
I'm an undergrad here. I'm a sophomore broadcast journalism program, and I'm Wayne. I had the opportunity to go to RFK about 1 month ago, and I met with Mr. Schrade and Dr. Flores. I was part of a journalism class that we have news quizzes every week, and one of our questions was, what's opening this week? Why is it the most famous school, et cetera, et cetera. And our journalism teacher, our first assignment was to go to RFK and find any story. And I happened to go on the day when Mr. Schraede was there. I met some of the Kennedys, and it was one of the most life-changing things. I ended up writing a story about this for, a local thing, Neon Tommy here. But one of the things that I really got out of it is that the students were so passionate. but I was talking to Dr. Flores afterwards, and I feel as though even though we need to see, students need to see what happens after college, I still think it's also very important for us as students to be able to go into the high school, because college is an intermediate step to get to that point. So if the students are able to see what we are doing every single day to improve, to hit that next level, I think that is just as important as knowing what's in the future, because there is some kind of path you have to take to get there. So I was wondering if there was any, I know we have lots of mentoring programs and tutoring programs here, but if there was going to be an effort to get journalism students to be able to interact with, you know, students who are interested in this field also, so we understand what's going on locally, because we may want to stay here locally, you know, in Los Angeles and do this kind of work. If there's going to be anything where we can come out and come and talk to them.
Yes, I don't know.
We had a really good meeting. I was being interviewed in the library, and it was really exciting because it was good to talk about school, what was happening. At that moment, we weren't sure of it, but Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, Max's big sister, was on her way to the school. So I said to the students, stay and be a reception committee. One of the architects was there. They were on their way to the Dodger ball game. So we had this wonderful reception. And the thing that I liked about that visit, Kathleen really was the first of the family to see the school as it's been completed. The one thing that is part of the Robert Kennedy legacy, which is also mine, was community action. We worked with Bob Kennedy on community action legislation in the Congress. We then performed community action by organizing in Watts and East Los Angeles and the Farm Workers Union. And Robert Kennedy became a very important part of that. The important thing about all of that is that this school, to me, is going to be a base for community organization. What are the children going to do about housing problems, about community gardens? What are they going to do about crime on the streets? The commercial interests that were against us early on says they're all going to be a bunch of taggers and thieves. Well, I've been watching the Catalina Street wall, and there's nothing on it yet. And I think there's a really good spirit there among the students and the parents that we found when we were organizing a community program to build the schools. I didn't build the schools. We organized parents and students at Crescent, at MALDEF, the AFL-CIO, as contributing organizations that actually got the parents and students involved in getting that school. And to me, the school, with all of that I've heard here today and all of the valuable ideas of today, is that we can really put this school on the map as a community organizing system with the students and the parents and the teachers and supporters of changing that neighborhood and changing the lives of those kids as they contribute to it. Because I think the first thing, I've been thinking about what I should be saying at the dedication of the school on November 13th at 9 o'clock, if you're interested in being there, is that we have a terrible financial problem in the schools. And I think the parents and the students and supporters ought to be saying to the state legislature, we've got some of the worst funding in this state of any state in the nation. And that, I think, can be one of the ways that the RFK lab can really contribute to organizing to get those kind of social goals, those political goals working, so that that school is underfunded. We're short on teachers. Some of the public artists have already agreed to help out and do volunteer work. Max's niece, Megan Townsend, is going to do yoga classes in the school. So it'd be an after-school activity, not just soccer and football, and no football, basketball and so forth. So it's that kind of thing that we can get going, getting the kids involved and making their community better.
So Max, you're gonna.
I have a quick one. I just wanted to say that this was an absolutely remarkable afternoon, and I'm so looking forward to telling the rest of the members of my family about what happened here. I think if you had this meeting in Massachusetts, you'd lose your job. I think that it's, there is no school that would support the innovation that we just, heard from you guys, except USC. And we are so unbelievably lucky to have this kind of involvement in the school. And those were just absolutely extraordinary ideas, and I can't wait to see them implemented. My wife taught at the Derek Bach Center for Teaching and Learning about how to improve teaching, and she taught a course for 7 years at Harvard, and the whole point of the course was trying to figure out how to use your educational experience to determine how to live your life and what it means to lead a good life, and to use the characters in novels and in our in our reading to answer those questions. And this was a great question that you brought up, but I've never seen a method of learning that so lends itself to the fundamental questions, creativity and who we are. And you can't give these kids a better gift. You just absolutely can't. And it has been ignored in all these schools, and you're going to do something amazing. So thank you. Thank you.
So Ben, you had a...
Yeah, I guess a question of sorts, which is about the Robert Kennedy legacy in some ways seems about social justice, and I think that's a really intriguing thing to hear about, and it's been kind of the last several points all tied into this. So we at the same time recognize that schools have to deal with the standards that are imposed by from outside. And I guess the question is, and challenge in some ways, is how are these two connected? And do we really see the social justice work as kind of being a great bonus that's going to happen after school and around school and infuse it? Or is there a way of really looking for standards around social justice? How do we measure civic engagement? And when we talk about this assessment project that's going to happen, what kind of outcomes are we looking for that are social justice outcomes? I think that there's a lot of talk in education about we want civic engagement in our schools, but very few questions of accountability. The accountability questions are not part of the social justice questions. And really, if we're taking social justice seriously, my question for all of us is how are we measuring social justice? How are we measuring whether it is a center in the community for community organizing? I think these are not questions that have easy answers. And too many of our assessment projects focus only on math and reading. And I'm wondering whether this school could be a place that other schools will turn to and say, oh, okay, maybe that's how we're going to show that civic engagement actually does affect all sorts of learning outcomes, and here's how we measure it. So it's in some ways a question for all these projects, both how they're going to speak to the literacy and the math standards, but also how they're going to try and broaden some of the standards conversation.
Well, I was so appreciated that, and also thank you again to everyone who took the time and energy to put the presentations together. There's, these 21st century skills, there's new media literacy skills, there's standards, and I'm sure somewhere in literature there are civic engagement, social justice related skills as well. So I agree 100%. Let's make sure that we're measuring that. For me today, just my impression as a middle-aged person is just, how remarkably the world is changing, and how do we as schools, work with this change and adapt to this change and harness this change. But some of the things that I heard are actually not new. This idea of getting students to tell their stories, to do oral history interviews, to write about themselves, that's been around for a long time. It's just the methods, of the doing it that's changing. And so for me, part of the question that I have here is what happens next for us? Do we go back? Do our parents and students get to similarly enjoy this Pecha Kucha? I don't know if I'm saying it right. So that we then start saying, what do we want to see happening after school in the lab? What do we want to see happening in our classes? Because while I agree 100% that we need to assess our program and seek other funding, it's like, what is the it that we're measuring? And I don't think we have the it yet. So when you talk about a baseline, it's like a baseline for what, right? Is it measuring the students who are going to be involved in an after-school program, the students who are going to be involved in English or social studies classes, all our schools, a cross-section of the students? So for me, it's still so nebulous what the it is that I wonder about doing the baseline at this point, because I don't know where we're going yet. But I know that you've probably thought about it, Erin and Jane have probably talked, what is the next step for being able to take all these beautiful things that we've been exposed to?
Well, we'll figure out the format for the next step, but our next step is to go back to the community and the school and to engage with you guys. That we want to hear your stories and your perspectives. This is not a one-size-fits-all. It's not dumping tools from an airplane and spearing. It really is. It's got to be an ongoing conversation. So we today shared some possibilities, but as we begin, I'm hoping that this leads to bigger and better dialogues. And we wanted to close, we were informed in our own discussion by a beautiful poem that Meryl Alber shared with us a few weeks ago that we think can be a provocation to start the next phase of this discussion. And so we're going to end with a poem, and then we'll have whatever milling about needs to take place.
Hey everybody, thank you for sticking around. We've had a little bit of an exodus, but so I'm a first-year PhD student here at Annenberg and a member of the lab. And my own background is actually in early childhood education, so I also kind of want to put a plug into thinking about what happens before kids get to the campus of RFK, and that also as part of the community. So again, with my background in early childhood education, one kind of educational philosophy I was exposed to was the philosophy of Reggio Emilia, which was originated from the kind of northern Italy town of Reggio Emilia that was essentially decimated by World War II. And when they decided to rebuild the community, schools were the focus. Schools, the piazza, were where families, the community, poured all their energy into, and kind of in an evocative way decided to create an educational system that was a communal activity of sharing culture through joint exploration among children and adults who together opened topics to speculation and discussion, encouraging children to be researchers of their own learning and of teachers to be researchers into students' learning and their own learning as teachers. So kind of the seminal book, I guess, of this philosophy is this book called The 100 Languages of Children. And the founder, Loris Malaguzzi, kind of used this poem as a provocation, and I'd like for us to kind of think about it in some certain ways. So the poem is called No Way, the 100 is There. So the child is made of 100. The child has 100 languages, 100 hands, 100 thoughts, 100 ways of thinking, of playing, of speaking. 100, always 100 ways of listening, of marveling, of loving, 100 joys for singing and understanding, 100 worlds to discover, 100 worlds to invent, 100 worlds to dream. The child has 100 languages, and 100 more. But they steal 99. The school and the culture separate the head from the body. They tell the child to think without hands, to do without head, to listen and not to speak, to understand without joy, to love and to marvel only at Easter and Christmas. They tell the child to discover the world already there. And of the 100, they steal 99. They tell the child that work and play, reality and fantasy, science and imagination, sky and earth, reason and dream are things that do not belong together. And thus they tell the child that the 100 is not there. The child says, no way, the 100 is there. So I'm going back and doing some critical analysis of what kind of Loris Malaguzzi wrote, some questions for us to take away with in the way that we frame what we do from here, the action that we take, is in what ways, for all the children who are now coming into this brand shiny new school, what ways did their previous experiences, their family's experiences, separate the head from the body? Did that school and that culture do? And what was that nebulous, if we define language not just as Spanish, English, Korean, but as a form of communication, what was that institutionalized form of communication, of language, that maybe other educational experiences or the educational system in general has proposed. And then what that RFK will do will be different to promote those 99 other, those hundreds more ways of languages. And in what ways can we delve into defining those languages by asking those questions, by, like Doug said, asking the children. In what ways can, as kind of pulling together what the dean said and what Max had said, what Monica said, in what ways can we do cool stuff, but even better cool stuff to make children and also their families and the community as a whole and the environment part of the solution. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, folks. It's been great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for hosting us. I'm curious about my students. No, I have lots of questions. I read them. I send you an email.
Oh, I think that's a really good idea.